SPX jumped plus 1.0% as Fed nominee Warsh clears a hurdle to Senate hearing, lifted software and financials. Welcome to your daily market briefing for 2026-04-13. The broad market traded with a strong tone as SPX closed plus 1.02% and NDX finished plus 1.06%. Leadership came from IGV, XOK, while pressure showed up in XLU, XLP. Here is the broad market snapshot. S&P 500 up 1.02%. Nasdaq 100 up 1.06%. Dow Jones up 0.63%. Next, the ETF curve set shows where relative strength and weakness developed through the session. Leaders were software, plus 5.40%, technology, plus 2.10%. Laggards were utilities, minus 1.21%, consumer staples, minus 1.00%. Across global markets, the session leaned constructive globally, with most major regions holding up. Japan was one of the weakest pockets in the map, while Australia and Oceania held up better than the rest. Stepping back, the broad market traded with a strong tone as SPX closed plus 1.02% and NDX finished plus 1.06%. Leadership came from IGV, XLK, while pressure showed up in XLU, XLP. The stock market fear and greed index is 25, which sits in fear. That points to a cautious tape where traders still want confirmation before adding risk. On the S&P 500 heat map, leaders were software plus 5.40%, financials plus 1.75%. Laggards were utilities negative 1.21%, consumer staples negative 1.00%. The market is still trading through the Fed lens, with investors using data points such as upcoming macro releases to refine expectations for the next policy move. If the incoming data runs hot, rate cut hopes could be pushed back and pressure duration-sensitive sectors. Commodity action was split. Brent led, while natural gas lagged, so the move looked selective rather than broad-based. The index board leaned higher, with Dow carrying the weakest tone and Nikkei holding up best. Mega cap curves were mostly positive, which points to a broad tone move more than a single main story. Forex showed a risk-on currency tone, with the sharpest move in USD/JPY and the best relative strength in EUR/USD. Crypto remained constructive, which helps confirm the broader market risk tone. Bond curves suggest yields were mixed to lower, so rates still mattered for the session. The main focus stayed concentrated in software and financials. The pressure point remained utilities and consumer staples. Into the next session, the key checks are the next macro events, the path of yields, and whether leadership broadens or narrows. Traders should also watch whether Fed nominee Warsh clears a hurdle to Senate hearing. CNBC keeps driving headline risk. That is the key takeaway for today's market. The broad market traded with a strong tone as SPX closed plus 1.02% and NDX finished plus 1.06%. Leadership came from IGV, XLK, while pressure showed up in XLU, XLP. Keep watching policy signals, index leadership, and the next macro catalysts.